Uh, they also held discussion with Gambia Engineering Consultancy Services with a view to coming to an agreement for the design of the ferry ramps. So both of them were going in tandem, although the procurement of the ferries and their delivery were finalized before the conclusions of the design of the ferry ramps.
Okay. All right, go ahead. So you contracted Mr. Idinjai and he gave you
yes,
a design.
The consulting engineers, GAMEX, were approached. You will see from this letter that I want to read this letter. During the discussions, we were informed, that's Idinjai speaking, that we had a meeting with Honorable Mustafa Bojang, Mr. Kyriakos, and Ibrahim Njai of National Roads Authority in our offices on 27th January 2011. That was 2 months before the Galia Holding joint venture agreement. GAMEX was briefed on the need for the construction of ramps at both Banjul and Bara to cater for the landing crafts intended to be commissioned on the Banjul-Bara crossing. Subsequent to this meeting, we visited both the Banjul and Bara ferry terminals, after which we wrote a report, a copy of which is attached. We were later requested by Honorable Mustafa Bojang to make him a copy of the said report, and this we did on 28 February 2011. We have not had any feedback since we wrote our report. The reason for bringing out this letter is for the Commission to know that by the time the GPA and other investors were required to invest in the Galia joint venture, the Office of the President with their representatives had already initiated contact with potential engineering firms with a view to coming to an agreement for the design of the ferry ramps. Because Mr. Mustafa Bojang was the Gambia's honorary consul in Gida, and Mr. Kyriakos, the ones represented here, Kyriakos was the managing director of the Gali Holdings, whilst Mr. Ibrahim Njai was the managing director of the National Roads Authority.
All right. Where is that letter from?
This letter is from Gambia Engineering Consulting Services to Chairperson, Task Force for the Hiving of the Ferries from GPA, Jaipa, Kairaba Avenue, Kanifing Municipality. Jaipa, because the head of Jaipa was the chairperson of the task force.
But this was after the first mission or before the first mission? It was before the signing of the joint venture, but was it before the first mission?
I believe this was just after the first mission. I believe was on the 3rd March 2011. We can confirm this was around the same time.
There is a report.
Yes, ma'am. The joint venture was signed on the 5th of March 2011.
Was before the joint venture, but was it before the first mission? That's my question. But let's move on. I will ascertain from the exhibits. As at the first mission, was GPA aware that it would be required to contribute towards the acquisition of the ferries?
Before the first mission, no, because it was after the return of the acting MD from the first mission that the memo that I passed, number one, the memo from acting MD to DF was sent to me. So
okay.
Before that time, the GPA was not aware that we had to invest in the ferries.
All right, now, Mr. Haligay says he was removed as MD, and you became, you told us Mr. Guy was removed as MD, and you became the MD.
Yes.
And he became the operations manager, director, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When the ferries were commissioned, were you there?
Yes, I was there.
So what happened? Why didn't they not work?
The ferries did not work because the features of the ferries is different from the features of the ferries that we currently have. The features of Kansala and Aljamdo, those are the two Greek ferries, are meant for ramps, whilst our current fleet, they work on landing bridges. So the drafts of the Kansala and Aljamdo would not be able to work on our present fleet. That was why we were required to build new ferry ramps. Even the commissioning was done in the GPA Roro ramp, the roll-on and roll-off ferry ramp that we use for discharging vehicles in the main GPA proper.
I would like to rephrase the question. Why did you commission ferries that did not run?
So the ferries were commissioned as part of one of the celebrations, whether it was July 22nd celebrations or whatever. So it was, the ferries were purchased and the partners were working on the ferry landing facilities, and government wanted to commission it. So the commissioning was done on the GPA facilities proper, the roll-on roll-off vessel, whilst it is not meant for the roll-on roll-off vessels, because that's where we handle our container vessels. So it was commissioned on a facility not owned by the ferries.
What we don't understand is you seem to need the approval of the Office of the President to proceed on matters regarding the ferry.
Yes, that's
whereas correct. It should be the other way around. They need to seek your advice and know-how on whether these ferries are appropriate for the welfare of Gambians. So, did you go along with the full ceremony of the commissioning of the ferry with the full knowledge that they were not going to run anyway?
No, I think the commission, the background has to be clear, sir. You would see from the submission that I just gave, the third one, the task force report, it clearly stated one of their achievements was the inspection and approving of ferry vessels. What that meant was, why I highlighted that was to show that the inspection and the approving of the purchase of the ferry vessels, that was done outside of the GPA proper. Although Hali Abdullah Gai as acting MD then, and one Keba Mane, one of our electrical engineers, traveled with the delegation to Greece, but the management of the project happened at the President's office and at the task force level. So everything was done in a rush to get the ferries here in Banjul without working on the ramps to make sure they are usable. That is why upon their arrival, and as part of the July 22nd, I believe, celebrations then, government wanted to commission the ferries, and the only way that it could have been commissioned properly was for it to be held at the GPA roll-off wharf, the Roro wharf. That is, and it can still be used at that place if the engineering situation of the ferries are up to scratch. But I am definitely sure that that is not the case with these ferries lying down around the port.
I have a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, that both you and Mr. Guy knew these ferries were a wrong or an investment too expensive, and that there could be some issues with the commissioning. My question is, was it out of order for you to write or to advise the Office of the President that it is misleading to commission these ferries and give the Gambian the impression that we had good ferries? Was that really out of order for the Ports Authority to do that?
I think it would have been difficult because I have a letter here which showed that in one of the requests for disbursement of monies to the Greeks, I questioned the integrity of the request and wrote to the President's office and informed them of the steps that needed to be done to make sure that, to validate sort of the request of the Greeks, but that intervention was turned down. It is an email from myself to the Gambian partners dated 30th June 2011. I have it here, in which I clearly explained my reservations on the investment request and recommended to government on the approach to take when the monies being requested from the Greeks were becoming too much. However, that one was not regarded.
Thank you. Counsel, your witness.
What date is that
Yes,
document?
That is in an email that I wrote on the 30th June 2011 and addressed to Hali, Ambassador Toure, Mustafa Yabo as PS, President's Office, and Momodu Sasabali as the Director of Budget. All of them check signatories in this joint account.
And you're saying there was no response?
It was disregarded.
Meaning there was no response, or your advice wasn't taken, was rejected? What do you mean disregarded?
Because in this, in their submission, why I said it was disregarded is in their submission, they sort of prepared a statement of account showing all the monies disbursed by both GPA and Social Security, and then knocking off the bills that they want to charge into those funds, and then showing an outstanding contribution from the partners, GPA and Social Security. When that email was sent to me with a request for an additional payment of $559,000, I sent an email to government and advising that we should not go ahead with this payment, and I gave the reasons line by line as to how the request from the Greeks could be verified, validated, and we make sure we get value for money. However, we got a letter from the OP giving us directive that we go ahead with the payment, disregarding my advice.
All right. Could you also add that to the bundle of documents to be admitted?
Yes. That's it. It's an email from them to us dated 26th June 2011.
You mean the response was by email as well?
No, their request was by email. My response was by email, but the intervention from the OP, the directive, was by letter.
Okay. Can you put the two emails and the letter together so that we can understand? Yeah. Yes. All right.
So the advice was disregarded, and we were directed to pay 558,363 euros.
Now, you were saying at the time you commissioned, you had to use other facilities not meant for the ferries in order to commission and have some fanfare, I presume, around the ferries. So what happened to the slipway? Was it completed?
Yes.
Who built the slipway?
The slipway was built by Sinco Spa, a Senegalese registered company.
And who paid for the slipway?
Ourselves, Gambia Ports Authority, Social Security, and the Minister of Finance.
The joint venture partners
Yes.
did not pay?
No, the Gallia did not pay.
Were the slipways completed as per the design?
Whether the slipway were completed according to design, I'm afraid the design engineer is in a better position to. All our payments were made on the valuation advice of the design engineer,
the
supervision engineer.
Who's the
Gamex, Idi Enjai.
You were the MD. Why can't you tell us whether it was completed as per design? How come you cannot tell us that?
No, I can confirm that it was all the payments were made on the confirmation because we contracted, I mean GPA, Social Security, and Gambia government contracted Gamex. After Gamex were introduced to us by the government team headed by the Director General of National Roads Authority, Mustafa Bojang, and Kriakos.
Mr. Tambedu, you have said so.
Yes.
But like any employer, if you employ an expert, he would give you certificates, you would pay.
Yes.
Did the GAMEX certify to Gambia Ports Authority and other employer institutions that the works had been completed as per the design?
Yes.
Then you should be in a position to say so.
Yes,
now,
that's correct.
Then why did the ferries not work? I still don't have an answer to that question.
I believe the ferries did not work because the draft of the ferry, I think under normal circumstances, what should have happened, I believe, is once the ferries arrived, whatever engineering term is going to be used was, I expected the engineer, Gamex, looking at the ferries, knowing the operational environment, and then design whatever ramp should have been built. However, you would remember from my explanation that I mentioned that the talking to the Gamex started before the arrival of the ferries. So the ferries,
Are you saying the design was completed before you came on board?
No. It was completed. It was started before I came on board. Of course, in January 2011.
The design?
I came on board in April 2011.
What about the design? Did Ports Authority look at the design? Did they have an input on the design? You had your engineers. And this was not the first ferry you were receiving.
I believe the operations team. I was the MD, yes, but the project, remember, was managed by the OP. We were putting the monies in it, of course, but with the intervention of the OP and expressing the urgency, you would even have to think twice before intervening in any way that it would appear as if you are delaying. I remember in many meetings, Dr. Njogoba would impress on us the urgency of the ferries project and why the President's office was pushing for the quick implementation to make sure the ferries start plying as soon as possible. So definitely it was under that pressure. I'm not qualified to say whether the design was wrongly done by Gamex. However, the ferries, because of siltation and the draft of the vessels, never worked under the ramps that was built for their purpose. It never worked under those ramps.
Were they tried out on the ramps?
It was tried, yeah, but it never worked. They were tried. It never worked.
So what happened? Specifically, what happened when they were tried?
We said that we needed to dredge the area. However, the dredging that was required it would have been even cheaper to just cut your losses, whatever losses, and then get new ferries which would be suitable for the present landing facilities, rather than trying to make these old ferries operational. Because we at the GPA looked at it this way. Is it better for us to cut our losses and stop the project in this way, rather than investing, getting new ferries for a landing facilities which would work, rather than trying to make these ferries work? And the ferries also had technical issues. The engineering was not up to scratch, as we saw one of the ramps falling into the river during one of the sea trials. So they were very, very old ferries, which the OP rose to purchase without, maybe with our cosmetic intervention, because Hali Gai was taken to Greece with Keba Mane. Hali is an economist, transport planner. Keba is an electronics engineer. They did not have the competence to be able to certify ferries to be used in the Banjul-Bara ferry crossing.
So what stopped GPA from sending the relevant competence on the mission?
That choice was before I was MD, definitely. The trip was before I was MD. But I know it did not happen. The ferries were bought without due process, and that is what led us to this problem.
Did you ever commission independent technical report about these ferries and the slipways during the time you were MD or any time thereafter? Is there any report lying somewhere that independently could tell this commission what went wrong?
No, all the attempts to do an evaluation was on the technical suitability of the ferries and not on the project as a whole. So we identified people who would be able to assist in the technical evaluation of the ferries. However, because of the environment that prevailed then, I remember all those identified declined politely to participate in the evaluation of the ferries.
So there has never been an evaluation?
No, there has never been. As far as I know, until the time I left office, there was no professional evaluation of the condition of the ferries.
When did you leave office?
On the 22nd of August, 2012.
That was when you were, what happened?
Yes. What happened, I wrote to the President's office complaining about staff who were insubordinating my management, and they were bragging of their relationship with the former MD, Mohamed Lamin Jiba, who was then at Social Security. When I complained verbally in one of my sessions with the former Secretary General, Dr. Njogu Lamin Ba, he advised me to write. When I officially wrote, I was dismissed the following week after my complaint reached the President's office, and then I was charged that I gave false information to the office of the President. I was charged for giving false information after the case went far and it was clear that I would be discharged from that case. I was again charged for economic crime, remanded for 3 weeks at the notorious Mile 2 prison. The economic charge based on the fact that myself and Hali Gai used funds meant for the rehabilitation of the ferries, used those funds in the procurement of the Galia ferries. Whilst actually before using the funds in the Galia ferries, all the records pointed out to the fact that it was taken to the board of directors. That was when we were both acquitted and discharged of all the charges.
You were actually acquitted and discharged?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What is this settlement agreement then? When you signed this settlement agreement, you had already been acquitted and discharged?
Yes. The settlement agreement was what we did not know at the time, that after our acquitting and discharge, that the Galia partners had went to court, or they were in arbitration with government. They were in some sort of legal wrangle with Gambia government. And then it came clear to the government that myself and Haligai were needed as to step in on behalf of government.
As witnesses.
As witnesses.
That's the context.
Yes, that's the context. So
all right, thank you. Bearing in mind that this matter is on arbitration. Yeah. You came back, since then you didn't go back to office until this January?
This March.
This March. Who took over from you? It's Mr. Lamin Jiba
Mohamed Lamin Jiba, yes.
He was, of course, removed at some point from testimony before this court. Who took over from him?
Lamin Sanyang took over from him.
Is there any report, now that you have gone back and you are in charge, is there any report lying anywhere about what decisions or course of action Gambia Ports Authority sought to take in relation to this very expensive project that could not be implemented? What steps, what were the next steps? You had ferries, very expensive, slipways, very expensive. Are they just going to be, were they just going to be allowed to lie there and rot? What arrangements? Is there anything on record?
Yes. As we speak, Gambia government is in arbitration with Galia, the Greek partners, with a view to coming to an amicable settlement with the investments made by both parties. But what is on the table, is the technical suitability of the ferries is questionable. Even if I can say for sure that even if the rams were not a problem, the investments made in the ferries would not have, it would not have been a viable project, considering the euro payments made for the ferries and the cost of the landing bridges. So the out-of-court settlement being looked at by the government now with the Galia partners, we maybe sell the ferries and then reduce our losses is the only way forward currently. That's my honest advice.
What have the ferries been maintained?
Yes, they are being maintained. We do scrape it once in a while to make sure it is in working order. And
scraping. Scraping, did you say?
Scraping, yes, the hull.
What about the engine?
The engines, since I came back, definitely we did not test the engines, but we have moored it now on a safe area to make sure we get to test the engines and look at the technical competence to place some reliable value for any disposal of the ferries in the near future, once the arbitration process is completed.
Mr. Okay, can I have the documents now? all the documents, including the first three that were mentioned.
Yes. Separate.
Including the whole, the whole file? Is it the
Yes.
whole file?
That's your file.
The whole file?
Yes, the whole file.
I believe we have this one already. Mr. Chairman, may I apply to have admitted a file from the GPA Ferry Services containing documents relating to the acquisition or the joint venture between Gambia government and Galia Holding Limited.
excuse me, Ma. Can I just mention one thing which might help the Commission?
Can you wait till the Commission is ready?
A mix of documents relating to joint venture agreement with Gallia Holdings and GPA/Gambia government concerning the ferries Al Jamdu and Kansala, admitted marked SC 42. I didn't want to call it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tambedu, you wanted to add something?
Yes. What I wanted to add is that the procurement of the second-hand ferries was as a result of the intervention of the Office of the President. This is because the GPA had already gone through a GPPA procurement process to identify and buy new ferries through a consulting naval architect, and the contract had already been approved by the GPPA until it was just a matter of signing, when that process was stopped because of the Greek project that came from the Office of the President. But we had already gone through an international tender process, and we have these documents available to show that even the GPPA had approved the process and identified a consulting engineer for the design and procurement of new ferries. But that process was stopped by the OP's intervention for the second-hand ferries.
How much was going to be the cost of that project?
That project was supposed to be in the region of the new ferries, I believe.
If you can't remember, that's fine. You said you have the documentation.
Exactly, but we have
You'll be required to produce those documents.
Yes, I can.
That should be of interest.
Yeah.
Can you confirm the total cost? How much did GPA spend? And together with Social Security, total cost of the ferries and the slipways? Everything together, GPA and Social Security, and Gambia government.
And Gambia government. I'm afraid I might need that file.
Very well. Can he have the exhibit, the file?
To be able to confirm that.
MS-52. Sorry. SC, what's your number?
Mr. Tamberu, do you need time to do the calculation?
No, I think I have the total cost spent by GPA, excluding Social Security.
That's what you have?
Yes.
Okay, you don't have the composite figure?
No, I don't have the composite figure.
All right. You can repeat it. I think we have that figure, but repeat it for the record. And then we would like you to, because you were really coordinating the project.
That's correct.
So we'd like you to, to give us a total figure.
Cost. Okay. The total cost by the Gambia Ports Authority in the Galia project to date is 169,928,881.45 bututs.
All right. Thank you. You would have to come back if you can do so tomorrow and bring the documents.
Okay.
You just take a short time, bring the documents for the procurement that was on or was aborted, and also the composite figure of the total cost.
Okay.
Right. And maybe the current cost of a ferry. That would also be useful comparison, I believe. That's all for the witness for today, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tambedu, I just have a quick question, please. One is a statement as well. The explanation you provided regarding the ferries are to the point. And we all know that GPA have purchased ferries in the past. So I think one of the questions we had earlier asked this morning to Mr. Guy was the fact that they went on the mission, and based on the inspection report submitted, he mentioned that rehabilitation, dry docking, surveys were not carried out then, and they should have been done. But then they still went ahead to sign the joint venture agreement, which, you know, and then also recommending that payment be made, which was also a concern. So from your own point of view, it was interesting and clear that you said that the ferries are not suitable for Gambia. Apart from the sleepaways, they just were not technically suitable. So that's very clear. My question is, in GPA's financial records, how is this treated? Is it an investment, or how was it classified?
Thank you. Yes, it is classified as investment, although up to date, I can safely say that up to around 70 to 75% provision for diminution had already passed through our books.
So currently it is only 25. The net book value is only showing 25% roughly.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, okay. So I guess based on the outcome of the arbitration, then one will know what to do.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
One final one. Why do you believe the OP pushed to procure those ferries, despite your ability to do it on your own? What was in it for them?
My belief is that, as I said in my final evidence, that we had already gone through a public procurement process, and we identified consulting engineer for the buying of new ferries. They were just in a rush to have cheap popularity, to bring in ferries which has not been proven, whose real cost would not be at arm's length transaction, and then it is possible it would not be suitable for our environment because it was sole sourced. There was no competition in the procurement process that showed that the arm's length transaction would never have been achieved. So in summary, my belief is that when they pushed us into this project for short-term popularity gains, and we all know that whenever transactions are not at arm's length, there could be malfeasance or inappropriate use of public resources.
I think you are being diplomatic, so let me be more direct. Was there any business interest in it for the office of the president?
Sir, the office of the president did not have any competence, any technical competence to identify for us partners in the buying or operating partners for ferries. So they did not have the technical competence, and definitely there shouldn't have been any directive from that end to direct us to invest in these ferries. So it was utterly wrong, but we all know how things used to operate. Small people like us who dare to question in the smallest manner, where we learned how we experienced it in the most difficult way. So that is what happened, definitely.
Counsel?
Mr. Tambede, just two quick questions. How long was it going to take if you said you had already lined up the procurement of new ferries? How many ferries, by the way, were you going to?
I believe it was 2 ferries.
How long was it going to take?
Normally the construction would normally take 6 months, at most 8 months to complete. So within a year, we would definitely have had ferries suitable for our requirements and our local conditions, which was the most important bit.
Why would that be too long for the office of the president? You suggested that the time for procuring new ferries was too long. They were looking for cheap popularity, cheap popularity.
You know, at times I would just want to quote the public outcry that is happening currently in the use of the port. I think I always say that whenever you want shortcuts, your fingers are burnt. So what happened was the government, because of the outcry of the time that people used to take to cross at Banjul Bara, so conmen, knowing the type of leadership we had, would want to take advantage and make sure that they bring in proposals that might have potential short-term gains, that instead of taking 8 months, 9 months to construct new ferries from scratch, I have one ferry operating right now in Greece, which you can get in the next 1 month.
Now, do you know who introduced these Greeks to the office of the president?
From all records, it is one Mustafa Bojang, the Gambian consul in Jeddah, Saudi.
He was the consul,
yes.
Not the ambassador.
No,
consul.
not the Gambian ambassador. His title was Gambian consul in Jeddah, Mustafa Bojang. If you look at the letter that Gamex wrote before the joint venture was signed, he was one of those who visited Gamex together with Kyriakos, the managing director of Galia, and Ibrahim Njai, the Director General of National Roads Authority. He was the third person, Mustafa Bojang.
All right, thank you very much. We'll expect you back tomorrow briefly to produce those documents and the final figures.
No problem.
Right.
Thank you.
I call Mr. Buba Sanyang, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government.
It's new. So, let's go on. You read after me, sir. I swear by the Almighty Allah.
I swear by the Almighty Allah.
That the evidence I shall give to this commission.
That the evidence I shall give to this commission.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing.
And nothing.
But the truth.
But the truth.
So help me Allah.
So help me Allah.
Wait for the instruction.
Could you state your names, please?
My name is Buba Sanyang.
Where do you live, Mr. Sanyang?
Pardon me?
Where do you live?
I live at Brusubi.
What office do you hold at the moment?
I am the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands and Regional Government.
Before that, did you serve, sorry, for how long did you hold that position?
From March to date.
March this year?
Yes.
Before that, did you hold any position in government?
Yes.
Yes.
Director of Lands and Service.
For how long?
For 1 year, 2 months.
Did you hold any public office before that?
Yes. I was with Social Security
In what capacity?
as the principal surveyor.
Would you like to sit down?
Thank you.
Mr. Sanyang, you were summoned in regard to land lease to Gambia Milling Corporation in Banjul.
Yes.
You were required to provide the file, your office file.
Yes.
Do you have it?
Yes, I brought it along with your
Yes.
guys.
Right. Do you have a copy of the file? Did you copy it so that we can?
Yes, I have a copy.
All right. Okay. I'll ask you questions and then we will apply to admit the copy of the file you have. Now, I'll show you Exhibit MS-52, which purports to be a lease, serial registration number K154/2013, dated 30th April 2013, from your minister to the Gambia Milling Corporation. Can you kindly check whether you have such a lease in your file?
Yes.
You have the original?
The original is still in the file. The file is with the office.
Did you bring
With
the
your- with your
original
office,
file?
yeah. Yes.
Did
the
you bring your
file is
original
here.
file?
Yes.
Where is it?
The file, I left it at your office.
Oh, you deposited it. Okay.
It's not brought.
All right. We will collect it. We'll continue meanwhile. You have the copy with you?
Yes.
All right. You can confirm that that lease was issued.
Yes, I
I would
confirm.
also like you to look at Exhibit SC38. This Exhibit SC38 is a transfer, serial registration number 2/75, volume 10 CD, dated 31st December 1974, between the government of the Gambia and Gambia Ports Authority.
Yes.
Is that document familiar? Have you seen it before?
It's not within our files anyway. But
You
I've
don't, it's not within your files.
yes, it's not in the file that we have.
I see. Okay, let's go back to the lease. On what basis was the lease that you first saw issued to Gambia Milling Corporation? Can you look at the file and let the Commission know?
From the file, there is a letter from the Deputy Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Lands and Regional Government, addressed to the Director of Lands and Surveys.
What is the date of that letter?
The letter is dated 22nd of April 2013. And the letter is about application of land to Gambia Milling Corporation. And it reads, please find attached, overleaf, a self-explanatory letter from the Corporation of the Gambia Milling Corporation, which was dated 12 April 2013 in connection to the above subject. In this regard, the Ministry is in support of the request and would like to urge your office to urgently take the necessary action in this matter.
And what is this letter? The letter dated 12 April 2013. Who is it from?
It's from the Ministry, from the Mr. Manka Sanyang, for Permanent Secretary.
Addressed to the Director of Lands.
Yes, ma'am.
There is quoted in that letter dated 12 April 2013.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that letter, and where is it from?
The letter quoted here.
Yes.
It's the letter from Gambia Milling Corporation addressed to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Regional Government, Regional Administration and Lands. It's dated 12 April 2013. The reference is title document for the Navy Yard and adjacent. We are pleased to inform you that we have now received consent from the Gambia Ports Authority to lease freehold land measured 1,500 square meters in the name of our company. Please see enclosed our letter dated the 2nd of August under the GPPA reply dated the 11th of April. In the circumstance, kindly issue lease in the name of Gambia Milling Corporation Limited, which entity is the entity responsible for the operation of the flour mill project since its incorporation this month. Please see enclosed also copies of the said certificate of incorporation for your reference. We also undertake to pay all relevant fees in connection with the issuance of the said lease. We thank you in advance for your swift action on the matter. Yours faithfully, Fadi Maziji. Is copied to the Secretary General, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Ministry of Works and Construction and Infrastructure, Director, Department of Lands and Surveys.
Mr. Sanyang, is there any consent from the Gambia Ports Authority to lease freehold land measuring 1,500 square meters?
This letter that they quoted is a letter from, there's a letter from Gambia Ports Authority addressed to the Managing Director, International Milling Corporation, dated 11th April 2013. It reads there, sir, title document for the Navy Yard and adjacent. Reference is invited to your letter of even reference dated 2nd April 2013 in relation to the above captioned subject matter. Please be informed that these authorities assent to the land measured 1,500 meters square, property of the GPA, to your institution for the development of the flour milling project. By the same token, you are still reminded that the GPA is yet to receive compensation for the said prime land as claimed for in our letter dated 7 May 2012. This letter is from Mr. Usman Jobate, for Managing Director. It's copied to the Secretary General, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Works, Managing Director, NAWEC.
Do you consider that as a letter conveying consent to your ministry to lease land, the land in question, to Gambia Milling Corporation?
No. This letter is addressed to the Managing Director, the International Milling Corporation.
It's not addressed to you, to your office?
It's not addressed to our office.
It's not addressed to your Department of Lands and Surveys?
No, ma'am.
What is your background?
I'm a surveyor.
You're a surveyor?
Yes.
Trained surveyor?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your qualification? I
have a BSc in surveying and mapping.
Is it possible to lease freehold land belonging to someone else, for your ministry to lease freehold land belonging to another person, a third person?
Freehold land is by itself a title. It cannot be leased.
Okay. So, what is the procedure for applying for a lease at your ministry?
The procedure is the person applying for lease must prove and have ownership of the property once he or she wants to lease. And once you have that ownership and you have all the documentations regarding that ownership authenticated, then you will get a form from the ministry, Department of Lands and Surveys, that you will fill, that is application for lease. Then once you get this form filled, the file will be opened, and then it will go through the process, that is vetting process, through the physical planning, and back to the lands. Then it will go for approval, at the first approval from the minister to conduct a survey. And once the survey is conducted, lease plans will be provided, and the lease document will be bought by the applicant, and the file will eventually be sent back to the minister for a signature. And it will be brought back to the Department of Lands and Surveys, where the file will be sent for registration and payment of taxes at the GRA, and that concludes the process.
When you say you have to show ownership of land, what kind of ownership are you talking about?
The ownership it varies. It depends. If it is a customary tenure, you have to go to the Alikali and then you have to establish your ownership. If it is a state allocation, you have to provide your allocation letter from the state. Those are the two forms that you can have ownership.
All right. So in this case, what would be the basis? I know you were not there. But I'm sure you've looked at the file and you're the current PS local government. What would be the basis for your ministry purporting to give a lease over freehold land? What would be the basis?
Yeah, from the files that I have seen, I would not say there is a base, but I don't know at the time what they use as a base, but I don't see a base in the file.
You don't see a basis?
In the file, yes.
That's clear enough. Could you tell us who were involved in the processing of this so-called lease to Gambia Milling Corporation?
According to the file, the file went to the letters quoted, that is the letter from the Managing Director, Gambia Milling Corporation, and the letter from GPA, and the letter from the Office of the President were sent to the Department of Lands and Surveys, where a letter from the Deputy Permanent Secretary also attached.
Who was the Deputy Permanent Secretary?
At the time was Mr. Manka Sanya.
Is he still working with the ministry?
No, ma'am.
He's no longer in government?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Who else on the side of your ministry was involved?
Yes, the file was opened. The principal surveyor, the signature on that sector is sent to the principal surveyor by the file administrator, Mr. Dabo.
What's his first name?
Mr. Dauda Dabo.
Okay. So at the Department of Lands and Surveys, only Mr. Dabo was involved?
No, at the Department of Lands and Surveys, Mr. Dabo opened the file and then minuted to the principal surveyor, indicating that the company has paid their survey fees on TR number quoted dated 23rd for 2013. File is now forwarded to you for record processing of the lease plans, please. This was what was forwarded to the principal surveyor. And the principal surveyor at the time, according to the signature, is Mr. Momodu Juve.
So a survey was carried out?
Yes, there was an instruction, and that instruction, survey was carried out, and the principal surveyor minuted to the senior land and valuation officer, indicating that a set of lease plans and the payment have been prepared and sent. And these lease plans were vetted by the valuation officer, and then HM minutes was prepared for the Honorable Minister.
What is an HM minute?
HM minutes means Honorable Minister's minute.
Oh, okay.
A minute that is prepared at the Department of Lands and Surveys to send the files to the ministry. The first point that it will go to will be the Deputy Permanent Secretary Technical, who will receive the file and then send it to the Permanent Secretary, and the Permanent Secretary will send it to the Minister. The Permanent Secretary will, first of all, if it is a lease, will sign the lease document, the post-on mark Permanent Secretary, and will send the lease to the Minister for his or her signature. Once the Minister finishes, it will follow back the same route. That's the Permanent Secretary, Deputy Permanent Secretary, and then back to the Directorate.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sanyan, in this whole process that you described, it doesn't appear as if there has been at any point where any of the officers contacted Ports Authority or checked with Ports Authority or involved them in any way in leasing land, which even from the letter from the, your department belonged to Gambia Ports Authority.
According to the file, apart from the letter Ports Authority wrote to the mailing company, there is nothing that proves that.
They were not contacted?
According to the file. I don't know verbally.
Okay. Now, isn't it common knowledge, even among your own technical circles, that Banjul is mostly freehold land? Isn't that common knowledge?
That I know of. I said that I know of.
You know?
Yes.
But shouldn't every surveyor in the country know that Banjul is mostly freehold land?
Yes. If we are surveying and working with the Department of Lands and Surveys, you are expected to know that.
I've shown you the title of Gambia Ports Authority. Have you looked at the map, the plan attached to the...
The last one?
Yes, the plans.
Yes.
Showing the area.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to compare the area?
Sorry, is that exhibited?
Yes, it's SC38. SC38, the transfer, deed of transfer. SC38. Have you had a chance to compare the plan in exhibit SC38 with the sketch plan attached to the purported lease?
Yes.
Do you have any opinion?
The lease plan on the file is within the area marked on the transfer, within the area.
As belonging to GPA?
GPA, exactly.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to apply to have admitted your file. You will hand over the original and the copy, and I'll apply to substitute the original with the copy. Hand over both the original and the copy. Can you collect the files, please? Oh, the cover page was not copied. We'll have to copy the cover page before you leave. Mr. Chairman, may I apply to have admitted the Department of Lands and Surveys file number SL/117/201-2013, date 15 April 2013, name Gambia Milling Corporation, Liberation Avenue, Banjul, together with a copy of the contents of the file. I'll apply to have the cover also photocopied. I'll also apply to have the original substituted by the copy.
lease serial registration number K154/2013, dated 30th of April 2013, between the minister responsible for the administration of the State Lands Act 1991 and Gambia Milling Corporation, original compared with the copy substituted for retention. Admitted, Mark SC 43.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sang, just one final question. Are you aware that freehold land in Banjul is not part of state land?
Yes.
Okay. And you are aware, of course, that the minister has no authority whatsoever over freehold land in Banjul?
Yeah, freehold land is not part of the land we transacted on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, the Commission may have questions.
Yeah, just one or two questions. You have told the Commission that Gambia Ports Authority has a freehold property in the ports. The land at the ports is freehold land. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, is there any document showing that the Gambia Ports Authority owns the freehold land at the ports?
Freehold lands are not registered with us, but then they are normally at the council, BCC. They are registered there, and then normally on the documents you will see, on the transfer document you will see they would have indicated the land rent payment, but freehold lands are exempted from payment of land rent.
Well, I'll tell you this. I know for a fact that freehold lands are given either to individuals or to corporations by way of grant, starting with the colonial government. They always granted freehold lands as far as Banjul and a few other places are concerned. But if you do not have that, I suppose you assume all the time that the GPA has freehold land in Banjul at the ports.
The property at the ports,
yes,
that is the area belonging to GPA.
Yes.
We don't have a document to specifically say that this person is a freehold land.
You don't have it at the lands office?
No, we don't have
it's
it at
all
the
right.
lands office.
But have you been assuming all the time that it is freehold land?
No, not assuming. I contacted the BCC to get the areas under them that are considered freehold land.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they told me the ports area is part of it.
I see. It's all right. Just understand that the BCC, that is Banjul City Council, is not the determinant of freehold land in Banjul.
Yes.
The best place to determine that is at the registry of lands. Okay?
Right.
Now, the main reason why I'm asking you questions really is that you said that freehold land cannot be leased. Now, you mean, do you, that freehold land cannot be leased when it belongs to another person by the government of the Gambia? In other words, the government cannot lease out freehold land belonging to others.
Freehold itself is a title.
Yes.
Yes.
And government, I agree with you, government cannot lease it to anyone else. Was that what you were saying?
As far as the freehold title is concerned.
Yes.
Yes.
I say you are quite correct. Government cannot do it.
Yes.
But on the other hand, even government can have a lease of freehold land belonging to, say, you. If you have freehold land, you can lease it to the government. Do you realize that?
Yes.
That is all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that precision, especially. Thank you. You'll be required to come tomorrow on other matters at 2:30.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 2:30.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You know the matters, of course. You have your summons. All right.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, all right. Sorry.
All right, you may go now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all for today.
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock.